to remain unique. Don't ever change the way you are. Stay on that path, and it's really I think it's a big one. I know it gets thrown around a lot being unique, but I think if you have a great uniqueness, never let it go, and be really true to that. And the good ones, you remember them and you talk about them for years to come because they were so inspirational, have a big effect on your life, and you just want to be like that person. So, it's and for me, it's so easy. It's a no-brainer. It's right there in front of you, and just look after your people, do the right thing by them, and they'll do everything back for you.
What is up, our fellow Legacy Warriors? It's such a unique perspective and a thing to think about. The power that you have to shift a culture just by showing up and going and impacting the lives of others. We all have that power within us, but how are we utilizing that to shift the culture that we find ourselves in? That culture could be your circle, could be your home, could be work. Ultimately, there's culture that you can set everywhere you go. It's just a matter of how you show up. So on this episode, we had Mark Ashby on as a guest, and it was just a powerful conversation of just working at the top for what Mark does and helping CEOs and top-level executives go ahead and shift the culture by adjusting how they interact with themselves. And then just how that trickles down to shift the culture overall for the business, but how that impacts everybody else within the business by that shift in culture. A couple of things that Mark talks about is the need to adapt, the need to share ideas and experiences to help level up, and the power of a support system. And then many more ideas that Mark shares in the episode. Those are very powerful when you consider it. But as we've discussed before, if you're looking to level up your listening experience for your podcast, check out adaptable. Go in there, use the referral code 2NativeSons, and go level up your podcasting experience by sharing clips, by finding things in different episodes that stick out to you that you can share that specific clip. And then you can also determine the lineup for the podcasts that show up that you truly enjoy listening to. So go level up your podcast experience using Podopolo. Use the referral code 2NativeSons. Other than that, enjoy the episode, and we'll catch you later.
What is up, our fellow Legacy Warriors? Another episode of Legacy Digging with Scott Brandt.
Patrick Murakami, and we are 2NativeSons, and today we have a really special guest. Really cool story. Mark Ashby. Mark, thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Thank you, gents, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Scott, did you want to go ahead and let the Warriors know what drew us into Mark's story?
Reading the resume, reading what Mark puts out on Podmatch, the background with the military piece and going over there, serving time in Iraq, and incorporating, leading through the violence, the turmoil that's going on over there, and finding a way to turn on, turn off the empathy and really help leaders over there correlate and build a different culture as you're going through the turmoil and the heat that's going on over there. And it's unique because when you look at it too, on Podmatch, we have crisis culture and performance specialist. And so it is one of those unique things, Mark, when you think about it, as you're building a legacy, what you're leaving behind, when you think about the crisis and culture piece, how does the legacy piece for you incorporate between those two ideas and what you're trying to build and help others overcome?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things these days like crisis and culture, and even performance in the, I suppose in more in the professional sphere, they all sort of go hand in hand. And I think the days of the old of maybe employers, getting away with, I suppose, treating their own employees how they feel. Maybe the workforce of 20, 30 years ago is slowly evaporating. I think a lot of the younger generation, especially coming through now that I'm seeing, they won't put up with it anymore. They're very educated, and not just educated from, say, university. They're educated in what they can actually ask for and I suppose almost demand, if you want to use that word, in the corporate sphere. And they're not as scared to move on. if something doesn't work for them anymore, like when I was a young guy, you had your job and everybody was so happy to have a job, that they just went there and did their job and they shut up. And even if they were being treated poorly, they would just continue on. But I think today those things are slowly changing. And like I said, a lot of the younger, I call them kids because they are kids. they're not scared to say, okay, I'm not going to take this anymore, and I'm going to go and look at something else now. And quite often now they'll even just leave without another position, which is, it's pretty sort of a gutsy move, to be honest, to do that. And I'm even seeing now a bit of a trend of teams moving, which is a bit of a new one where you're maybe having a team of 15 people, leaving an organisation in one hit, and it's really, really interesting to sort of to watch that and see how that's going to pan out in the future, I suppose. And look, it's a real, I suppose, conundrum as well for that employer that is maybe has that old school mentality where they have to adapt, and they've got to then start having that approach of a bit more of an empathetic approach and developing that really, fantastic culture in the business. Because it's like anything, you're in the military. If you have a great leader, you'll do anything for them. You literally walk through fire for that person. And I worked with some fantastic people in my time in the Middle East, and the good ones, you remember them and you talk about them for years to come because they were so inspirational, have a big effect on your life, and you just want to be like that person. So yeah, it's and for me, it's so easy. It's a no-brainer. It's right there in front of you, and just look after your people, do the right thing by them, and they'll do everything back for you.
I love that. And now you guys can see so easily why we wanted to have Mark join our podcast. Mark, you touched base on a couple of things that I think a lot of people don't look at it from maybe the perspective that you just brought about the younger generation, right? Something that's really on the forefront of my mind all the time is generational wealth. And I feel like that we are in a season right now where a lot of the boomers are kind of dying, baby boomers. And so a lot of it now is kind of the recycle. We're on the precipice, we're on the horizon of new generation kind of rebuilding that wealth. And typically it goes about 3 generations deep. From your perspective with what you teach and the things that you focus on, do you also feel that it's a whole different time frame than kind of what we've seen accustomed to, not even in the corporate world, but just in the generations that you work with?
Yeah, I think it's massive. I mean, I'm right in that middle. I'm 52, so I'm right in that middle of that baby boomer sort of age and that younger generation. Right in that middle sort of sphere there. And I suppose I went back to university at 48 to do my master's degree, and of course you're going to be sitting there with kids. A lot of them they're not, of course, that undergrad age, but that sort of mid-20s, 25 to 26 years of age, and going out there into the workforce. And it really gave me a real feel of what their mindset's at, and and where they're going to go with their lives. Yeah, and I think, like I said, they're not scared to I think a lot of them really embrace where they're at, and they're not scared to ask questions that they really want to know. I mean, I used to get inundated by kids there all the time, because at first you're one of the older people in the classroom, and but once they learn that you've got that experience in life and what you've done, they of course then want to really grasp and grab hold of your knowledge. And I actually love that. I love where you can have a bit of an influence on someone's life at that age, rather than the opposite. Rather than people, I think, my age, that are a bit more, they want to hold on to that knowledge, they don't want to give it out. They're a bit scared that someone's going to take their role or take their position. I've never had that attitude. I love giving that information out and giving that person the best chance they can to go and do well. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yes.
You want to be I know it's a bit of a catchphrase. You want to be the best version of yourself, but that's basically what it is. You don't want to die wondering. And I suppose being around all that frailty for so many years overseas, and seeing a lot of my friends lose their lives, that it makes you realise, hey, we're only here in this form of our life for one hit at it. We get one chance, and make the most of it. Don't have any regrets. Just go out and grasp it, and never look back. That's my opinion.
No, it's huge when you think about that. We've talked about it before, where the fear of giving out your ideas, the fear of connecting with people because XYZ, somebody's going to steal it, or you hear the fact that if I give this up, am I giving up a piece of who I am? But the fact that when you can have the conversation with somebody, not have the fear of them running and stealing your ideas, what may happen with that is you come across somebody that has an idea that can be added to what's going on already, and it creates a humongous growth piece that if you're fearful of somebody running with it, you miss out on an opportunity to really create this explosion of growth that needs to take place. But the thing is, an idea that you have may be missing a certain part, and then you talk to somebody and share your idea, they may have something that adds to the growth of whatever that is. And it's the fact of ideas really aren't original, but everybody has their perspective that needs to be shared, needs to be heard, because there may be something missing out on whatever it is. And I think that's a huge piece there that you highlighted on not fearful of talking to people, giving the advice, giving the insight to set them up, because if you impact their lives, what kind of change can they go create because of the impact that you had by having the conversation with them?
Yeah, and it's a really good point there, Scott, as well. Like where people have that fear that they're going to have something taken away from them, and I like to think a lot of it's reciprocal. That it goes around that if you do the right thing by people, not everybody, but it may also come back to work in your benefit, where you help somebody out, give them that bit of advice, and down the track, it may be a year or two. Quite often that will come back around, and you may get a really nice recommendation out of it or a referral, and that person will remember you. And because I remember those great leaders, like I said before. So if you can try and be a bit like that yourself, it's going to come back in a positive way. At least it won't be negative. And I had a really good experience. I worked with one of our former prime ministers overseas from Australia, and the guy was a leader of our country, and away from all the nuts and bolts of what he did in politics, he was very, very big on asking questions, and if he had any doubts, he would come around and find out. And it was really interesting to see a person at that level, of basically the pinnacle of leadership, to be that way. And it made me really realize, okay, wow, this guy's he's the apex of what we do, and yet he's got his own questions of us. And it really opened my eyes up to, like, we're all the same, but we're no different. I know we're all born differently, but some of us look differently, and some of us have different methodologies and ideologies and religions and things. But from above, I always look at when you're flying over on a plane and you look down, we're all just ants on this planet. We're all just running around trying to do the best we can,
yes,
and build our little kingdoms and our family units. And it really made me think a lot overseas, because you do a lot of thinking in those environments, and what's right, what's wrong in life, and just to remain unique. And I've been told this a lot through my life, just to remain unique. Don't ever change the way you are. Stay on that path, and it's really I think it's a big one. I know it gets thrown around a lot, being unique, but I think if you have a great uniqueness, never let it go, and be really true to that.
I love that. That's such a great nugget right there for anybody. So before we kind of deep dive into how you got into what you're doing now, I want to ask a question here. A lot of times, a lot of veterans, and especially here in the States, I don't know for your country, and so this is why I'm kind of curious. A lot of times after maybe serving time in the military, especially going into war zones, a lot of our soldiers kind of come back almost, would you say jaded? Hardened maybe?
Yeah, a little bit of the jadedness, kind of hardened, but I think it's that what you experience over there sometimes.
Of course, right? And again, nobody can fault you, nobody can tell you what experience you had and what you've gone through, but for you personally, I don't get that coming from you in the few minutes that we've had conversation for. So tell us a little bit. I mean, is that something that is that common in your guys' military when people come back from a war zone to maybe experience and feel that way? And then, if it is, or if, a little bit more, and then kind of, what did you do to be able to bypass some of that? Or, what did you have to do to work through some of that?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. I mean, we've pretty much been embedded with the US forever. So everything that your soldiers have gone through, it's exactly the same for us. And especially the level of operations we've all been on. I mean, I think in my time in Iraq, I completed roughly around about 1,600 missions. So, and more time than World War I and World War II combined. So it's unbelievable, really. It's groundbreaking compared to previous, war. I know we have better facilities now, and we have better food now and equipment, but that time on the ground and that dealing with that, I suppose, fear aspect every day in combat's exactly the same. The horrors of war, I suppose, if you want to call it that, and somebody who's never been there, they can't understand it.
Right.
It really is something that's and I think you find out a lot about yourself when you go to war. Before I went to the Middle East, I'd been to East Timor on operations with the paratroopers in Australia. So that was my big take on combat, and it wasn't really combat. It was peacekeeping, and it was being in a country that's had a lot of its own issues, but it wasn't combat. And going to Iraq was such a wake up call for me. It was just like, wow, this is what it's all about. The noise, the smell, the pace of it every day, and the pure fear of it. So I think coming home from that, for me personally, it was a bit of a rough time. I was going through a bad divorce, and then I lost my father. I was very, very close with my father, and lost him very suddenly. So it wasn't a great time. And in the midst of that, I met a fantastic lady that we're still together now, and she's the love of my life. The person I wish I had probably met 30 years ago, and a lot of talking, and I went and saw some, seek tests and help myself. I went and saw a psychologist for a little while, and just to, I suppose, have a conversation with somebody that was different, that was independent to me. I got onto a great guy in Australia, very nice bloke, and we really talked through a lot, and it was a real help to me. But I've also got a very good support network around me as well. My family are very, very tight, with my mum, who's still alive, and my sisters as well. I think I've always had that bit of a mindset of, you can't just sit in the corner. You've got to do something. You've got to do something to either help yourself or maybe help that person around you, because if you sit at the corner, you're just going to self-destruct. And they call it identity crisis. That's what our, I suppose, government psychs and things, how they refer to it when you come back to Australia. And a lot of the soldiers, they come back and it really is an identity crisis. They don't know what to do with themselves. I've had a lot of friends come back that have really struggled. A lot of them have taken their lives. We've had so many men from my old unit that have taken their lives. So they've survived a decade of war. Some of them highly decorated guys, and come back and really, really sad that have taken their lives. And a lot of them have had very bad incidents overseas. Really bad injuries, lost limbs and brain damage, and chopper crashes and things like this. And it's really, really terrible. And I don't know what the answer is. I think if you don't have that support network, you're behind the eight ball straight away. I was very fortunate that I've got that, and you've got to talk about it. You can't sit there and do nothing. Even when I was at the Australian Embassy for my last 4 years, and we used to talk about our missions and things going on all the time. You constantly talk about it. If what happened that day, whether it was good or bad, what we learned from it, and we'd all get around as a group and have a conversation. And it's very important. And it's a real, I suppose, epidemic. It'd be exactly the same in the States with young men and a lot of the extra young military men. It's not as bad with the ladies, which is very, very fortunate, but with the guys, I suppose, for what they've seen in combat. And, it's something that's very close to my heart as well. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what the answer is, but I've always just tried to have a bit of a positive spin on things. That's my take on it, where I've had the right people around me and got that help, I suppose.
I appreciate you sharing your insight on that, because it is an epidemic, right? There's so many. Scott and I talk a lot about balance, and a lot of times we feel like that the generation that we grew up in, right? Hey, as a guy, you don't cry, you throw dirt on it, right? Ladies were told not to show emotions, so we're all kind of like already imbalanced from nurture, much less all the things that, we, especially as men, we internalize. So I appreciate you talking about the ability and building that tribe to maybe have the conversations, as well as the mentality. So,
yeah, no, I think it's because it goes hand in hand because of what you're doing within the corporate sector, working on the top level leaderships, those high level executives. And when you look at the individuals that are running a business, that are kind of everything trickles down, they set the culture. And if they're not in a place that, if something's out of whack for them in one part of their life, that really can impact them for everything else that they're doing. But it comes into the point of, as a business owner, I can't show up and show that vulnerability, because if I show that, that's a potential sign of weakness. And then you start having things blend in to the business where it just builds a toxic culture that is hard for everybody to go and want to be there. And it's like you highlighted, where the younger generation's getting into these businesses as an employee workforce, and they're getting away because they're like, I don't like this type of environment. This is not what I want to work in. And then, like you also highlighted, you're having these teams that are leaving. So when you think about coming from the military side and dealing with the combatives, that side, the war, and then going into a situation of working with corporate America and the leaders, how much of that, or what are you looking at in regards to helping them kind of strip that down so they can build a proper culture and environment where people want to be there to thrive and see the business succeed?
Yeah, it's a great point, isn't it? And it's so prevalent. I think it's more prevalent than what it is the opposite. Quite often I'll go into a business, and you're exactly right. You'll have whether it's a CEO or a CEO of that organization, and there's maybe a bad culture there. You may be brought in by that individual themselves. And after you do that little bit of digging, I mean, I love to get know that person one-on-one, really strip it down and find out who they are as a human being, not just at work, a bit about their family life. And maybe that person's going through a bad divorce themselves, or a custody battle with their children. Maybe they've had their mother or father have just passed away, and they haven't dealt with it well. And like you said, that just then filters down through the whole organization, and they don't realize it themselves that they are the person who's affecting what's going on. That's and once that slippery slope of that culture starts sliding away, it's very hard to click your fingers and bring it back. To make a bad culture can happen quite quickly, but to reverse that process, it's difficult, because you get disgruntled workers, and you get teams there in your middle management, and their attitude is, well, I've been treated like this now for months and I'm not happy about it. And they just get a sorry. And sometimes for them, it's not good enough. They want more than just a sorry. They want a total change. And it's really amazing to see. And my big thing is I love having that whole turning complex into simple. I go in there and I'm like, I don't want to have this big fuzzy picture. Let's just strip it back and make it really, really easy to understand in real layman's terms, so we know where we're at. And I think that's what I'm probably is one of my strengths, is that getting the best out of people like that. And it's some of them will take it on board and really like, okay, really want to change things around here, because you make them realize. I try and make them understand where they come from, that they've worked bloody hard in their life to get there. They've sacrificed. They've gone to university maybe a couple of times. They've risked everything to create this business or this empire. And I say to them, what part of that person when you first started is still here? Mm-hmm. Is that person still there? Do you actually enjoy what you do? Do you like coming to work on a Monday morning? Or do you come here now on Monday morning and all you're thinking about is Friday afternoon? And now if you have that attitude as a leader, imagine the rest of how that attitude's going to then wash down into your workers, because they're looking to you as that leader. I know what it's like to be in charge of people. It's a big, big responsibility. And I used to always say overseas that I had those underneath me. I had those 10 souls in my team underneath me. And all I cared about was getting the mission done, of course, but getting them home safely back to their families. That's all I cared about, really, at the end of the day. And it's the same in the corporate world. You've got to look after your people, because without them, your business is nothing. If they all leave tomorrow, you go broke. Even the biggest organizations in the world, really, and a lot of these organizations don't realize that. They become sausage factories. It's just churn the dollars over and get the people in, and massive turnover of staff. And they don't even understand sometimes, why are my staff leaving? Why are they leaving in droves? It's like, come on, it's right in front of you. And I suppose having my background, and you don't understand this a little bit, Scott, as well, where we're not as intimidated to go into a boardroom and call people out, and do it respectfully, do it nicely, but be honest about it and say, the problem here is this boardroom, or it's individuals here. It's not the staff below you. And it could be a shock to them sometimes. Be like, it's not me. It's like, well, and actually you are part of this problem. You brought me in to tell you the truth, so I'm here telling you the truth. And it's, you get some adverse reactions to it, but I think I've got a good way of getting around it. So, I think if I insult somebody, I've really done a bad job, because I'm generally, pretty good at it.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking that probably a little bit easier to walk into in front of a board of directors or a CEO after working with the prime minister.
Yeah, look, they can be intimidating. You might get, somebody who's very successful. They can be very big alpha males, and maybe they're earning, $10 million a year, maybe more, and they're very successful, and they're not used to being told either no or, maybe you should look at it in a different way. So, a lot of it correlates with military leaders and like you said before, maybe political leaders. They all correlate in little parts. There's all little elements there that are very, very similar. And I think that's why it works, because the nuts and bolts of leadership, the fundamentals are all the same, aren't they? It's about, leading from the front and getting the best out of your people and setting that example and really making the people around you better at what they do. That's what leadership really is. I think there's so many spheres these days of leadership. Everyone goes off on these different tangents about leadership. And I just laugh a lot of them and shake my head, because it's actually very, very simple. Just be what you're good at and let that, wash over your people. And that's the fundamentals of leadership.
Yeah, we actually were talking about this last week because we listened to a Twitter space, and this gentleman was one of the youngest mob bosses in the U.S. And, you imagine kind of what a mob boss does and the kind of the association of either respect and power that comes with it. But listening to that space, and he said, leadership is a characteristic, not a position. Man, when you think about a mob boss saying something like that, it was really powerful to me to hear that. So
yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. I'll take that one. I'll steal it off him.
yeah. So,
yeah, no, I like it, because it's really simple, isn't it? It's almost like a light switch. It's either on or off. And I think a lot of good leaders, I think they're right. They're almost born with it. They're just born with that ability to lead. I think some people can become good leaders. But if you have to be told to change your ways, then you're already behind the eight ball a little bit. Where if somebody who's just a natural leader, and you see it, I saw it overseas, and like I said, in that combat environment, you just see the great leaders, and their men will just do anything for them. They'll speak very highly of them, and it's just like, they just do it with ease. So yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't know how to describe it when you kind of see that. It's almost like it's almost kind of like they have a path let out for them, and they just walk through it, and it's almost like kind of it's purposeful or it's intentful, where a lot of times you see people kind of running around in circles. But, I think one of the beautiful things about life is watching some of those people who run around in circles to then becoming really great leaders, because they've taken the time to really figure out who they are, figure out and really nail down, like you talked about, being good at the thing that they're good at. And a lot of times people walk aimlessly around. So, as you got into kind of the realm of what you're doing, the coaching and the awareness piece and all these different things, how were you able to take the skills that you already had, turn that, and then how are you able to then take that approach and say, I know that corporations, I know that big CEOs, these larger outfits can benefit from my services. How did you be able to go ahead and take all those skill sets and translate that?
But first of all, I was lucky enough to have a friend of mine. He has his own sort of risk consultancy style business, a corporate business. So he said, come and do some work for me when I come back from the Middle East. So I started off with him. His whole business is generated around the media, the big media organisations in Australia. He does a lot of sort of risk consultancy there. He does crisis awareness talks and active shooter talks, because they're so much in the public eye, the media, and they have that bit of public backlash, and they can be very controversial. So they love keeping themselves safe. And when they're foreign correspondents, they're travelling all the time. So there's a bit of travel awareness as well. And I ended up doing some talks with them in the corporate sphere, and I during their boardroom sort of size talks, and I really enjoyed it. And it was something that sort of came pretty naturally. A bit terrified at first, of course. I was like, this is a bit different for me. But I soon learnt to really embrace it and love it. And I had a senior exec there I was talking to, but became sort of friendly with. And he suggested that I go to my own and do a slightly different thing from my friend. So I'm not sort of, a direct competition to him. And then I got in touch with a fantastic lady in Australia who's a branding specialist, and she specialises really in enhancing who you are and making you really believe in what you're good at, and systemising my approach and everything from my colour schemes to my my photography to just the whole business, my website and my online training platform. And so getting the right help was amazing. Mm-hmm. And because I, of course you can build it on your own, but I soon figured out that it was going to be a lot harder. And with her, it was really professional. And she's one of those ladies who doesn't just work with anybody. You've got to almost interview with her, and she's got to decide if you're worth going with. Very successful. And I was the first type of bloke that she'd ever worked with, from my sort of background. So for her, it was a bit of a new thing as well, which was fantastic. And it really gave me that big insight to having that self-belief that you can actually go out there and actually, bring out your best and your experiences, and help other people. Mm. And when you, I suppose, have your first couple of success stories, in that sort of sphere, it gives you that confidence, like, oh, okay, I can do this. And these people actually do want to listen to what I've got to say, because you are different and you come from a different, you're a different kettle of fish to what they are. You've seen the real highs and lows of life to the extremes they haven't seen. You know what it's like to work under pressure. I mean, they know what pressure is as well. You have deadlines and, your KPIs and all those sorts of things, and then productivity. But for us, that pressure was, and this is what I say to them in a lot of my courses, if, imagine you have a couple of your teammates on the Thursday afternoon, they get killed in your team. You're hit by a roadside bomb and they're dead. And they're not coming back ever. And I said, for us, we can't just go and, have a big meeting on Monday morning with all the execs or the managers and work out where do we go wrong? How do we do it better next time? But it doesn't really affect the businesses per se. They just keep motoring on and do it better. For us, we had to just get back on the wagon. It's straight away. There's no room to grieve or to cry about it. You're going to have a couple of, guys come in to replace those couple of people that were just killed, a quick bit of training for a couple of days, then you're back out on mission. So you can't just take that time to really get it right. You've got to get it right all the time. If you get it wrong out of mission, maybe somebody loses their life. And that's the big difference, I suppose, the example I bring in, where if you've got something that's a real high profile part of your business, pay attention to that part of the business, because if you get it wrong, it can be catastrophic. And there's some of the lessons that I suppose that I bring in working under that pressure, that ability to, I know the old sniper saying, the sniper saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, really slowing time down. And it works. It works because it's proven in combat in the most fearsome arena on earth to really take that split, that couple of seconds to take it in what's going on and try and avoid making a mistake that you would just that you may do by panicking and just making a decision based on nothing. So there are a lot of lessons that I really love to sort of put over, and they're made from years and years of trial and error, where we got things right, we got things wrong, we learnt from those mistakes in that arena. And I've had a couple of friends of mine, close friends, that were killed overseas. 1 minute you're having breakfast with that person, and a couple of hours later they're dead, and they're looking up at you through glazy eyes, and they're never coming back. And it's a real sobering moment, isn't it? It's a real reality check of life. And I say to the corporate people, you've got that ability, you've got that chance to not have to deal with that like we did. It's interesting, isn't it?
The trial and error thing, me as an entrepreneur, business owner, I can't stress that enough. I tell people all the time the two things that really allowed me to overcome where I came from. And so my background, basically I tell people I went from unpurposed to unfinished, went through major depression, coming through a really ugly divorce and, multiple suicide attempts, and to now where people are like, oh yeah, community leader, this is the guy you need to talk to if you're starting your business, right? And so to hear those things, it oftentimes feels surreal, but it's kind of like you talked about, once you get a couple of them down, you feel like that you could maneuver and that you can help people in other different directions. You can share your story, but I didn't expect that this would be my life, right? I didn't expect that this would be the space that I'm maneuvering, but it's so cool to hear that story time and time again from other entrepreneurs, from people who have gone through it in a different capacity, but to know that, you've kind of flipped the script, so to speak. So thank you for sharing that.
The amazing thing is just hearing what Mark's doing, that drive really to see people succeed and win, And just understanding that making a slight change for one person, how that can have such a huge waterfall effect on everybody else. And it just starts with one person. And when we can make and help somebody traverse where they're going from where they're at to where they want to go, walking with them, but they make those growth points, they go and do what they need to, is a huge thing. And so I would think, just based on the conversation, the legacy piece is going out there and helping one person make that change, which is going to go impact 6 people, that 6 degree of separation, and just how that chain reaction goes for you. So I don't know if I'm on the right trajectory here thinking about that, but when you think about it, Mark, for yourself, that legacy that you're building, what does that look like? And then as you're going about working with the corporate leaders and corporations and whatnot, as you're growing and building that, how is legacy adjusting and how's that pivoting for you to make a bigger impact for whatever that is for you?
Yeah, and it's something I really bring up with a lot of leaders themselves, especially at that sort of CEO level. I'll actually say the same thing to them. What sort of legacy do you want to leave behind? Do you want to be remembered as one of the greats of this organization? Do you want your people to talk about you for years in a great space because they do? Or do you want them to just forget you? And if they walk past you in the street, they would totally ignore you or maybe give you a mouthful or something. And it's, to some of them, maybe they don't really care as much, but I think it's important. And I would love, at least, I suppose, for my own legacy in the business, is that I can just have that effect on people, a great effect on people. You don't want them to blow smoke, but it's just, I suppose, to know all those years of hard work and sacrifice that you can have a real impact on them. And I love if you do a talk. I love when you get to that moment of having silence. I love it. I think it's amazing because you've got those people, you've got them totally ingrained in what you're saying. And I know that what I've been through is not the ordinary. It's different to what most people have been through, and the sheer volume and the amount of years at what I've done. And so it's going to have that impact. It's not that I'll live my life by it, but it's really nice. It's a nice thing when you hear something positive, or you get a nice review, or then the opposite. Because it's like I said, once you're gone, it's what your name and I suppose reputation is that sort of that follows on from that. And I think we all look at it different ways. Some people really want the accolades, but for myself, I'm just really thrilled if I can. I'd rather have one person who's in a really bad spot who gets through that, and you can have an impact on that person's life and turn it around. I love seeing that more than anything. I think that's the ultimate. Somebody who's really lost their confidence, and I've worked with a lady a while ago. It was like that. She was a COO of a big trading firm, and she was in a really bad way. A lot of it was cultural, having the male domination around her. And it was great to see her shine through it and come out of it with a real positive spin and really do well going forward. And that's what I love. So I think if you've done that, you've had a good day out. You've done a pretty good job.
When you start to piece together some of the leaps and bounds that you've had to get to where you're at, what are some of the pieces of advice that you might give to somebody who's kind of in a similar realm, or just kind of maybe starting their entrepreneur journey?
I think the biggest thing I would say to anybody is, I did a talk at university in front of about 1,000 students recently, a few months ago. And my big message to them was, if you've got a dream, chase after it. Don't let it go. Don't look back on your life when you're maybe my age and think, I wish I did that, because those years are gone. Mm-hmm. And what's the worst that can happen is that you fail. And if you fail, you learn from where you went wrong and go again. And I say to them, if I'm living proof that anybody can do it. I don't come from a family of extreme wealth or privilege. I didn't go to private schools. I went through the public system in Australia. I'm just a surfer from the beach. I grew up at the beach and a big surfing culture down here in Sydney. And that was my life when I was 5 years of age. My father was a surfer and that's where I lived and breathed that life. To then go on to do if you told me when I was young what I would go on to do, I would have probably laughed at you. I didn't even know where Iraq was. A lot of this terminology that I've learnt now in the corporate sphere, I didn't understand that when I first started. I had no idea what a COO was when I started. But now I do, because you take it on and you learn. And that's the challenge of it. And you learn something new all the time. And it's fantastic now that I've got this it's almost like a new career, really, than what you had. So, like I said, I'm living proof that if you want something bad enough, you can have it. Absolutely. I know you'll be hearing it a lot from sports people and people like that. And if you work hard, but it's hard work. And You're going to have little ups and downs. All these successful entrepreneurs that I've met, a lot of other coaches I've met, they're not successful overnight. A lot of them are successful over a decade. It takes them 10 years to have that amazing career where they're earning, big money. And it's not 1 or 2 years. It's several, 3, 4, 5 years before you really start getting that name out there and get going. But I say to people as well, don't give up. If you've really got a dream, you're good at something, you think you're quite unique in your sphere, really enhance that, and capitalize it and get the right people around you. That's a big one. I think big advice is that one that I was given as well. And keep going, because the ones that give up after a year or two, they're the ones that fail. They're the ones that keep going are the ones that are going to succeed in the end, and they will.
It's a mindset foundation piece. And I'm huge because actually I posted something today where a lot of people will blame circumstances, blame the external piece. And a lot of times you don't have control over that external piece. What you have control of is that internal piece. And the internal piece, the foundation, is your mindset, the belief system that you hold and you maintain, where that's where a lot of people are like, well, this is my belief system. Is that truly your belief system, or is that somebody that's been in your life that has told you this is how it has to be? And so that's where your belief system starts building. So it's one of these things, really. It's the mindset, the foundational piece of working on the mindset, really getting that as strong as you can, but also building your tribe around you that's lifting you up and is going and doing bigger things and driving you to go do bigger things. So I think it's one of those things that you can't blame the circumstances. You don't have a lot of control over this. What you have control of is what's in your bubble, which is just yourself.
You've got to really own those mistakes. You've got to understand why something failed, why it didn't work. And and you're right. It's all mindset. I mean, even physical, we used to do a lot of course, our horrible physical tests in the military and things, and especially with the specialist units, they're horrible. But it's all in your head. Everything's mental because everybody's hurting, and it's the people that who can push through it mentally. When your body's hurting, and it's the same in anything. It's the same in the corporate world or just the whole professional theatre, especially for high achievers. And I love working with those people that have got that real attitude of wanting to they're already good, but they want to become, really great at what they do. And it's because they have that mindset. They have that real approach of like, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to be successful in this, and this is what I'm doing. And they may just need a little bit of help and guidance to actually, achieve that. I mean, they're the easy ones to work with, those people. They're your dream people because they already want to be better and they haven't got the ego to go with it. They're like, okay, I'm already here, and how do I get to that next level? It's like a sports team that's already good, but they want to win the title. They just don't want to be making the numbers up. But it's all mindset, isn't it? It's all between your ears.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And a lot of times, most people, once they realize that they have it within themselves, it's just a little bit of an edge that they just need, and all of a sudden you see them run with it. So one of the things that I've really harnessed in since we started doing this podcast is really focusing in and zeroing in on the power of gratitude. And it's been a huge and integral piece for me to not only reflect. And so, I love this segment in here because it really gives maybe a time to really maybe acknowledge, maybe thank somebody that you maybe haven't had the opportunity to. But is there anybody that comes to mind when you think of kind of where you're at? And again, we've had anywhere from parents and siblings to spouses to children to, friends and family or people who helped, mentors, things like that. But is there anybody that comes to mind to you in terms of, that you would want to maybe publicly thank or just acknowledge in regards to helping you get to where you're at?
Probably three real pivotal people. Both my parents, for being people that really allowed me to go out and achieve my dreams. That they weren't, I suppose, parents that hold you back. They were the opposite. They were like, go off and chase it, and very supportive and just very consistent throughout my life. I was very close to my father, and unfortunately he's gone now. So that's a real bummer, because you never get past that. And also my lovely partner that I'm with now, her name's Shani. She's just an amazing lady that really has, a no BS approach, but a massive heart, and one of those people who will do anything for anybody. And just, gave me that strength to also go out and chase my dream. Even when I was at university, she was like, right, you back your work off. So you concentrate on your studies, you make sure you do that the best of your abilities, and then starting the business. And it's just that constant support the whole way through. And I'll always be, indebted to that with her, with that whole, support mechanism. So yeah, there you go. There's those three.
No, I love that. I think that, that support system that you talked about is so important. And there's an author that I really like, by the name of Seth Godin, and he talks about the tribe. And I think when he wrote his book, it was 75 people. I think he's updated to 100 people. But you think, look at maybe some of the people that and how many of them is it hard for them to even maybe list maybe one or two people, much less, 50, 75, or 100 people. So it is a lot of work to be able to build that. But the ones that you have, the ones that are around you, they really solidify and they make a huge difference. So I appreciate you sharing that, and shout out to those who have helped you get to where you're at. It's always fun and really eye appealing for me to realize, those people who are around me who have helped me get to where I'm at as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the tribe, I think that was the other great thing for me was going with that lady I was referring to earlier, with the branding specialist, Lady Mary. She introduced me to part of her tribe as well. They're a worldwide group of professional coaches in different sort of spheres, and we talk regularly and support each other, and even when it's on LinkedIn and we're all doing our regular posting and that support network there. And they're extremely professional people, very successful, all of them. It's not a massive tribe, but it's quite a good number, controlled number who gets in there. But it's so amazing to be part of that, because you get to learn off these people and really absorb what they're doing. And I've made some amazing contacts through them, through the US and Europe and places like that. And just to see how they go about their business and what's made them work. And it's all the same thing with those people. It's just hard work, dedication, understanding what they're good at, and really enhancing that. It's not rocket science. It's like I said, it's that taking complex and making it very, very simple. And that's what works.
How much would you say of the feedback to figure out what you're good at? I remember when I first launched my agency, I had to figure out what I felt like I was good at and the things that I struggled with. And that alone can sometimes be daunting, right? Because you're like, oh man, I got to face my own truths. But then to go to maybe your spouse to hear the uglier truth, right? Or to maybe go to your friends and family, which they've been dying to tell you these truths for a long time, So how much of that has played into kind of your role and your success as well?
Yeah. And that's right. Nobody ever wants to hear the negative stuff. But you have to. You have to hear the negative things. One thing I think I've become a lot better at over the years is really listening to people, really listening to what their story is and listening to what they say, and not just because you get so used to being in that role as a leader or a team leader overseas, and you're doing a lot of the talking, a lot of the mission planning. You're out on mission, you're talking on the radio, so you get used to it. But then you come back into the corporate or the professional world where you're a nobody, and it's like, no one cares here that you've really, that you could do that in that sphere. So can you do it here? And I knew that I was always reasonably good at, I suppose, getting the best out of people. I knew it myself, but do you think that other people, sort of know that? You don't. It's not until I had one of my good friends now at university sort of, say it to me, he said, this is something that you're good at, Mark. You should really enhance that. And a lot of the kids here, they want to listen to you and they want to learn from you. And it made me sort of really realize it was a bit of a light bulb moment that I was like, okay. And it's something that those words were really prophetic with me, and that I really remind myself of that conversation a lot of the times. If ever you think you're getting ahead of yourself, to really go back to that conversation, and the whole point of it is what you're doing, and you don't want to lose that. You never want to lose sight of what you're good at, but also keeping in check. And I think too many people become successful and they really lose sight of who they are. I had a friend that would become quite successful like that, and yeah, it was really sad. He sort of really changed the more successful he's got. And it wasn't until I sort of, had that bit of a few brutal words, with him, like, and it became about because of a situation. And it was just like, wow, yeah, okay, I've got to really, really chill things out a little bit, because nobody wants that. People want humble. They don't want somebody who's just talking about themselves, telling you how good they are. And I can't stand that for me personally. I love just great, genuine people. That's what it's all about.
Love that. Yes, 100%. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about some of the courses that you currently offer? And then I know you've got some new courses coming out for 2023. So share with us kind of what that looks like, and maybe, from our legacy warriors who may be looking to kind of hire you on, what is your ideal clientele or your niche?
Yeah, what I've been doing is a lot of work with individuals, from generally from the individual side, from that sort of board level up to the CEO. And then I'll work with the corporate teams more on that sort of middle management there. And my system, everything I have, like I said, it's very systemized. I've got a big bag of lessons that I've built. I think about 44 lessons, and I can really tailor that and customize that to suit that organization, which is really nice. And I'm moving in also into, again, a little bit back to my roots with the crisis awareness, talks I'll be doing, I think starting in February, the first one in Sydney. And they're going to be back to that boardroom, person to person conversation, around about 12 to 14 people at a time, and really based on the whole aspects of crisis awareness in their business, whether that's cyber awareness, active shooter, armed offender awareness, travel awareness. I'm even going to be going into a little bit about regulatory risk and supply chain risk as well, things like that. That everything really encompasses their business to help them, navigate moving forward with the amount of disruptions, the amount of, I suppose, distractions we have now. The cyber attacks are a very, very big one. And it's just about making them understand the little things. Also about that, ownership and responsibility in that organization, where if something bad happens, that they have to be transparent with the public. They can't just hide it and hope it's going to go away. And we had a big one in Sydney recently with one of the giant organizations, or a couple actually, that had all their clients' data stolen, personal files, medical records, and they really filtered down the release to the public of what had been actually stolen, rather than actually saying, okay, we've been hacked here, and this is what we think has gone, because the public ultimately are the ones that are the clients. And to know that to think your data's been stolen, to then maybe a month later being told, yeah, actually it has been released to the web, and we knew about it a month ago, that's going to really tick people off. So I'm really looking forward to these courses that I want to sort of probably do around the country, around Australia. And like I said, I love that little discrete setting where you can have a lot of interaction and involvement in the courses. It's not just me there telling everybody. It's about, this is my background. This is what I've done. I'm here. Really sucked it out of me. Like everything you want is here. And even, like I said, that it's very prevalent now, I suppose, with a lot of the active shooter stuff. Not as much in Australia, but people have still got to be very, very wary of it. And just those little things, how to give yourself the chance of actually getting yourself out of that situation, to not just follow the crowd and just run. Sometimes it's a matter of running is actually the worst thing you can do. To take a breath, take a moment, like we spoke about before, to really assess what's going on. And that may be the thing that keeps you alive. And I really love that side of it as well. So yeah, looking forward to those courses.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I actually did some acting with Spike TV, and several years ago they used to have a show that was called Don't Be a Victim, and they used to actually replay certain situations that had happened, giving you the actual facts in the story, but also recreating the scenario to show you what maybe you should or should not do. So the fact that you're teaching this to the general public, to people who need this to, for the awareness piece, is huge, because it was some of those things that you don't think of. And then when it does happen, because you've never thought about it, you've never gone through it, you can almost assume for a lot of people the worst thing may happen. So I love the fact that you're teaching that, and that it is a course that you offer. What is the best way for our listeners to be able to connect with you, follow you, and support you?
Yeah, so my website's very, very simple. It's just markashbyconsulting.com. My email is mark@markashbyconsulting.com. They're both Mark with a K, and I'm quite prevalent on LinkedIn and it's just Mark Ashby Consulting on LinkedIn as well. So I've got that all sewn up. And like I said, I post on LinkedIn generally a few times a week as well. Very interactive with a lot of people on there, which is really nice. And I just try and be very genuine and bring out a lot of my experiences moving forward. And that's the best way. Also on my website, I've got a free masterclass on there. People can just basically get on there and click a link. And I've got a bit of a masterclass talk. I think it goes about 15 minutes on there. Nice. And that has all the information where people can get in touch with me. And any of your viewers, listeners want to get in touch, I'd love to speak to them.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to go check out that masterclass for sure.
Put it in the show notes.
Yes. And we'll make sure that we get all of your information posted here. Is there anything else that you wanted to either highlight that maybe we didn't get a chance to discuss, or anything else, in these last closing minutes that you wanted to go ahead and offer?
Yeah, no, I just think it's, like I said, it's always a pleasure for me talking to great people like yourself in different parts of the world. I really enjoy it, and it's a real privilege, and it's never to be taken for granted. Like you have your own path of what you guys are doing, which is fantastic, and I really love that. And I think we've pretty much covered a lot of bases. I'm very fortunate. I get to do what I love every day, and I generally love that. And if you can love what you do in life, life's easy. And I've been, like I said, I'm very blessed that I'm still here. A lot of my good friends aren't, so I never take that for granted. I've got a lot of friends and their young wives out there. They're in their 40s and so similar ages that are now on their own with their kids and things. And that's a very, very a big reminder for me, a big wake up call to never take anything for granted. So that's my message to all your listeners. To really, really look after you, not just look after yourselves, look after your loved ones and your family members. And if you have any rifts out there, any little rifts with your family members, try and do the best to heal those, because all of a sudden months pass by, then years pass by, and it's just not worth it in the end. Like I said, we're only here for one go at it. So that's my final take on that. But otherwise, it's been fantastic, Jensen. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
It's been a real pleasure, Mark. There's so many different things that even just in this podcast that even I'm thinking about now, and I really appreciate that you show up authentic. I can definitely tell that, but also that you have the humility that matches. So thank you so much for how you present yourself and how you approach these things, because it's not every day that you can feel that genuine and that authentic version of people, because you never know what somebody's going through. But I really appreciated you showing up very authentic today.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate that.
Quite a bit of nuggets here for all the warriors listening. Really, every conversation, extract a couple that you can walk away with, implement into your life, and then come back and revisit the episode and see if there's something else that was shared that maybe you weren't ready for. And then you may be at a point where your mind's ready to accept that and then go implement it. But no, I appreciate Mark coming on, sharing your insight, sharing your story, and really just the passion of the heart that you really have for others and wanting to make that big change just through one person, and then having that as a chain reaction to go impact more people that you may not even realize are being impacted because of how you're showing up and the drive and the heart that you have for others. So I greatly appreciate coming on here and sharing that insight for our audience to take away and go do what they need to.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Scott. Yeah, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure, and the best of luck to yourselves as also moving forward with your program. Fantastic,
guys. This has been another fantastic episode. Again, closing this up for today. This has been another episode of Legacy Digging with Two Native Sons. We'll catch you on the next one.